I'm Avila Kilmurray and I work with the Social Change Initiative, which is based in Belfast, though works both locally and internationally in supporting activism and advocacy in the areas of human rights, peace building and refugee migrant rights. And I've been asked to say a few words about what the Good Friday Belfast Agreement covers in terms of constitutional arrangements and governance arrangements. And essentially, it was very innovative in that it recognised the different aspirations of people living in Northern Ireland, and it allows people in Northern Ireland to actually hold either and British and Irish identity and passports, which is really important in terms of a divided society. It also recognised the legitimacy of aspirations both to continuing with the union with Britain or indeed unification with the Irish Republic. And it provides for, at some point in time, whenever the British Secretary of State might consider that a majority of people in Northern Ireland might vote for unification, that a constitutional referendum would be held to consider this. But in between that happening or not happening, as the case may be, it also provides for devolved governance in Northern Ireland, for a elected power-sharing assembly in Stormont, with an executive that, as I say, is power-sharing. It's drawn from the major political parties. But alongside that, which really makes up what we could call Strand 1, there's also Strand 2 and Strand 3. And Strand 2 is about cross-border relations between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And there's a number of cross-border bodies set out, which really are around cooperation on sort of fairly functional issues like trade and so forth. But then the other aspect is Strand 3, which is the East-West aspect, and that really is relations between Ireland, Northern Ireland and indeed Britain and the United Kingdom. And it provides for both the British-Irish intergovernmental meetings, conference, but also actually sort of meetings for parliamentary representatives, not only from Westminster and Dublin and Stormont, but also from Scotland and Wales and indeed the Isle of Man. So it's got east-west, north-south, and then a focus on governance in Northern Ireland. In the Good Friday Agreement, it mentioned 108. That now has been somewhat reduced. But one of the things that perhaps I should have said in terms of the governance as well, what the Good Friday Agreement also included was a civic forum, which actually was established, but whenever the Assembly collapsed initially, the civic forum was put in abeyance as well, and unlike the Assembly, it was never brought back. The St Andrews Agreement obviously brought back the Assembly, despite some difficulties since then. And one of the ideas behind the civic forum was that when you're working in a society that's been affected by conflict, it can sometimes narrow politics and those involved in politics. The idea of the civic forum really was to bring in other voices, that had lived experience from employers and farmers and civil society, NGOs, community groups, youth groups, churches, so that it actually broadened the idea of what is politics. Now, it was an advisory body, but unfortunately it didn't come back with the St Andrews Agreement. It's still in abeyance. Strands 1, 2 and 3 had been in operation sporadically in that there has been, I think on the last count, about 8 suspensions of the executive, the power-sharing executive, for a whole series of reasons, and from concerns expressed in some cases from the sort of unionist side, in other cases from the national side. So when it did operate, it actually operated well. There was power sharing. There is a deputy first minister, though actually we talk about a deputy first minister. Actually, it's a shared role in terms of first minister, and that is held really by the 2 biggest parties. Currently, or certainly previously, at the last form, when the Assembly was operating, the Executive was operating, that was held by Sinn Féin and the Democratic Unionist Party. And indeed, if the Assembly hopefully comes back in the not foreseeable, not too far future, that would be held again by the Sinn Féin and the Democratic Unionist Party.